resurrect it with new characters and new faces and so on and so forth. They do not adequately develop a lot of the characters in this thing.
No.
The actors have personality. They're missing characters. The actors are fine. I don't have a problem with a single person in the cast.
Yeah.
I think the cast is bubbly. It's diverse. They're fun. They all have a distinct look to them, but nobody has any character to them.
Well,
and that's frustrating. Outside of the sisters, it's frustrating.
Yes.
Outside of the sisters.
I totally agree with that. I think Jack Quaid in this movie was actually pretty good, like as the boyfriend. I thought he was actually pretty funny for the most part, but like all the kids of the group, the friend group, this is the problem I kind of had with all their characters. And I let it slide for only one of them because like she's supposed to be like this, but they're all basically Randy from the first movie and the second movie.
They are
like everybody.
I mean, literally, they're like their nephews and nephew and niece.
Yeah,
I think, literally.
Like
in the story.
I excuse Mindy and I love that they named this guy Chad. I can excuse Mindy and Chad because it's like those are the nephews and nieces, a nephew and niece of Randy, and it's like okay, especially like the niece who very much takes after him with the whole horror movie obsession and being kind of like socially awkward, while like even like his the jock nephew he has even has a little bit of awkwardness to him and like makes film references like calling his arms Hobbs and Shaw. Like it's just like okay, like those guys are cool, but when you have everybody else in the group acting like Randy, knowing the rules, making references like that, they're not really standing out as unique then.
No.
The only thing that's making them kind of unique is that they're just related to Randy.
When the guy who's predicated his life on movies is annoyed with the fact that everybody's personality is defined by movies, like that's a problem over here. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, there's just no color to these characters because part of the fun of Randy, what made Randy a fun character in the original movie was that Randy was like kind of teaching because the others were not as up to par with slashers. And of course there was no internet either. I always, going back and watching the first two Scream movies, I was just sitting there thinking like, God, man, Randy would have a banger Letterboxd account. like this guy would have the snobbiest ass Letterboxd account, second only to mine. That would be biblical. But what happens then, and without getting into any spoilers here, this movie, I wish that Bettinelli Open and Gillett, I wish they had the gall. They should have killed off the original cast.
All three of them?
Everybody.
Damn,
they should have killed off everybody.
Are we gonna go into spoilers or?
No, I would like I said, I don't want to go into spoilers necessarily, but they should have killed off everybody, and it would have been hard to swallow, but it would have been justified.
Well, okay,
it would have been justified for the requel formula.
I think, and also it would have actually played with the whole requel idea, where it's like whenever people want these requels, they want the legacy characters to come back so they can pass the torch, but they always keep them around. They kept them around Star Wars. They keep them around in Ghostbusters and everything. It would have been something where it's like, not only did they pass the torch, that's it. They're gone forever too. Like they can't come back because it is like, they even kind of bring this up in the movie during the finale where it's like when Sydney does show up for the climax and they're just like, sorry, Sydney, like, you have to die for this one or whatever. Like, it's just like, yeah, well, why don't you actually do that? Like, because you really think about it, it's like, damn, this girl's been in this 5 times by now. And both her and Gail are just kind of like, all right, here we go. Get the gun. All right. That's obviously a person. That's obviously the killer trying to fake it. Boom, bam. Let's kill and everything. It's just like, it would have been better off. Yeah. Like you kill them off and it's just like, well, not only did they pass the torch, but now these new characters really don't know what can be coming towards them in terms of the Ghostface killer and all the different iterations that can happen with that.
And I just felt that it was non-committal in that regard. That would have been a ballsy torch passing that it flirts with, that the movie flirts with. But it doesn't go there as if to like risk offending the Scream movies. I mean, let's call these movies what they are. Let's call these movies what they are. These movies are Scooby-Doo. That's what these movies are, essentially. And it's not a knock. It's been
they had
very successful.
They had
Matthew
Shaggy in the
Lillard.
first one.
Yeah, Matthew Lillard.
Yeah, exactly. Who gave an outstanding
Oh,
performance,
dude, man, that's my favorite Matthew Lillard performance. I know everybody says it's Shaggy and Scooby Doo, but him as Stu is hilarious.
Well, Scream 1 predated the first live action
Yeah.
Scooby Doo, so I think
By
that
6
probably
years.
honestly that was probably his like audition tape essentially. So yeah, you're right. What was I gonna say? It was that these movies are wild. I don't know. So I Steve, would you say what they did with some of the legacy characters? Did you enjoy that? Were you okay with that?
I mean,
or it's just
enjoy is the wrong word when you're talking about murder and stuff like that.
yeah,
like,
the character,
but no,
character
but,
arcs,
but,
trouble
but
character
character.
arcs.
I know what you're saying. I'm almost being coy here. No, I know, and I appreciated that because you know what, it was a sincere send off, especially with what they did with the character, the specific character who does get killed throughout or what they did with him throughout the movie, and then to have it end like it does is very poignant. It's very poignant and powerful. I'm not just asking for these characters to be killed off in a schlocky, forget about them way. That proved that, they had a plan with this, and it was actually very good and very sincere. And there was some gravity loaned to it as well. I had no problem with what they did because not only did they go there, they went there really well, but they set themselves up for something, at least that I thought. They set themselves up for something that they weren't fully committal on.
I do think though they're not afraid of pissing off fans because they go hard on some
toxic fandoms,
on some toxic fan base, even Reddit at one point. I think indirectly, I'm like,
well,
I don't think they're afraid to piss people off. So
no,
that deserved
that. That was one of my favorite themes they kind of touch on is the toxicity of fans and the amount of death threats that creators get or actors get just for portraying a character, just for doing their work and everything. I think it was actually kind of cool that's kind of what it related to the killer's motive, is that they just wanted not to get into too much spoilers, but as we all know, throughout the movies, the Stab movies kept going even without a Woodsboro murder to base it on. It then goes in this. Mm-hmm. They even make fun of it in Scream 4. And Dom, when you eventually watch that, you'll see this. They bring up that Stab 5 had time travel. Stab 6 went back to basics, and then Stab 7 was a movie within a movie, so it was being Scream but as Stab and everything. Now Stab 8 is directed, and you tell me if this sounds familiar. Stab 8 was directed by Ryan Johnson, who wanted to play with your expectations and did different things.
That was hilarious. That was hilarious.
And it pissed off all the fans to where there's tons of YouTube videos of fans on YouTube bitching and moaning about how many changes made to the original format, and that they need to go back.
Stab 8 ruined their childhood.
Yeah.
I will say, I obviously I can't appreciate all of that, but there was a scene in the new one where they pull up IMDb, or in the first scene, she pulls up IMDb and she's scrolling through the first Stab movie in IMDb in the universe of Scream, and I just see David Schwimmer as Dewey. I'm like, that's funny. that's freaking funny.
Yeah, they've been good about that since they incorporated those Stab movies. Ever since the second one, they've been very tactful in how they've done that.
Yeah.
They've been very tactful in how they've done that. But I guess, because at the end of the day, I try to not, as a critic, I try to subscribe to the Ebert philosophy of what does the movie do? Don't criticize the movie too much on what you wanted it to do. Judge it on what it did. So I try not to harp. I do think the non-committal requel thing, it did aggravate me in a way. I think the more disappointing element with this, though, is the underwritten characters or the homogenization of the characters all being film nerds. Mm-hmm. That I think that's probably I think the greater offense to me.
I've seen defenses where it's this was my this was my comeback to this defense was, well, everybody nowadays knows film and everything. I mean, look how many people talk about it online. It would make sense if everybody in a friend group knew it. And I went, yeah, but I'm the only film nerd in my friend group. I'm the Randy of my film group. I mean, my friend group.
Yeah.
If they
100%.
I know you just quoted Robert Ebert saying, "Don't imagine what the film would be," but screw it, this is fun. If the characters were more like the kid characters, teenage characters. Actually, I should say the first girl, Jenna Ortega, she looks like an actual teenager because she is an actual teenager.
Yeah.
Everyone, all the other kids do not look like college kids because they probably are. But anyway, I was like, okay.
Melissa Barrera looks young. Melissa Barrera's 31.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't look much older than.
She doesn't. She can pull it off. I was kind of shocked when I saw that.
I remember when I watched In the Heights, and I was just like, oh, she's probably like in her 20s and everything, and I'm like, oh, never mind. Vanessa is literally 30 years old.
I don't know. Maybe if these characters, even if they were more unbearable, maybe dislikable, but in a fun way, because a lot of them are going to wind up getting stabbed. Maybe if one of the characters was obsessed with Quentin Tarantino, then you know what? Maybe and like in a bad way, in like an annoying ass way. Then you know what? Maybe there would be more substance. Doesn't have to be likable. Just something there. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, you know what, man? If you wanted to be where everybody in the friend group was a film buff in some sort of way, with today's there's just different film groups out there's different like film buffs types now. You have the Marvel, not the Marvel, but the comic book film buff. You have the you have the A24 film buffer of the group. You have the retro film guy, so the Quentin Tarantino guy. You have the horror movie.
You've got the normie.
They could have played with it where it's just like the friend group was like a film class, and they all had their own different favorite genres, and if you wanted to really get campy about it and everything, that would have been more fun. When everybody knows the rules of a horror film and everybody's Randy, it's not as unique.
I really like Joe's idea there. Because you could have had the one person who was like the big Halloween slasher fan.
Yeah.
Another one who's like, I only watch things on par with The Cabin in the Woods, that type of film. And then there's the other guy over here who's like, The Witch is the greatest goddamn movie ever made.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could have fun with that. Really, actually, you could have just done whether it be movies in general or just focusing on horror, because horror they do touch on it in this movie. It's branched out to elevated, to the typical slasher, to a mix in between.
If that scene in the living room where they're just talking about this very meta, where she's giving her monologue, if it just devolved into 2 extra minutes of them arguing over A24 films and Marvel, it's I don't know. It's I might have enjoyed that even more.
You haven't seen Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2? Stuff like that, But we'll give star ratings now because we do have one more topic to briefly touch on or try to dispel. I give it 2.5 out of 4 stars. I was mostly entertained by this movie. I really, truly was. It's cool to see this Scream come back, and I'm kind of worried now because this thing's making way more money than even they anticipated. I'm kind of worried we're going to get a sequel in the next 2 years. I kind of like how these movies have taken their time. Because the first 3 came out in a span of 4 years, and that was almost too much.
Yeah.
That's why it's even remarkable that Scream 2 came out the following year and was as good as it was. Yeah. Exactly, where Scream 3 took 2 extra years to come out, and it's the worst of the series. And then Scream 4 came out. What was it? 11 years ago? Yeah, it came out 11 years ago, and then you have this one, obviously 10 years after that. So I kind of there's going to be a retirement home Scream at this rate with Neve Campbell at this rate. But I hope because we've already gotten, people forget we already had the MTV series, which I watched a little bit of. But I just don't think – I think the cardinal sin of this, beyond – we can argue about whether or not they should have killed all the original characters off in the requel. That's my personal opinion. That's one thing I think would have made this thing stand out. That's just me. I don't know about – you guys are mixed on that. I think the biggest cardinal sin of this movie, I think, is just how underwritten and homogenized everybody is. Yeah. So it's 2.5 out of 4 for me. What say you, Dom?
Honestly, so the first Scream I would give a 3 out of 4. First 2 Screams I give 3 out of 4 stars pretty solidly. I would also have to go with 2.5, a strong 2.5 out of 4 stars for this new one, because it really wasn't that bad at all. It was pretty solid. It was a good time and some fun nods. But when you hold it up to how, I don't want to say innovative that first one was, but it had an extra oomph to it, probably because it was a 90s movie and every movie had that, that weird attitude about it. But it made enough moves where it's okay, You're not brainless. You're a cut above the schlock. But you're kind of stuck in this in between where it's a little hollow. So, 2.5 out of 4.
Joe, send us home on Scream.
For me, this franchise, I've been telling the guys this in the green room and everything. This to me is like one of my favorite movies of the 90s. I love it. I love the first one a ton. I love the second one a ton. 3 is disappointing. I like 4. I think 4 is a pretty good reboot or remake, whatever the hell they want to call it. And as far as this one goes, I think this one is good as well. It's about the same level as I thought about 4, which, if I had to give all these star ratings too, if Dom did his, the first one to me is 4 stars. The second one to me is 4 stars. The third one's 2, maybe 1.5. I really am disappointed by that third one. But 4 and this one are both 3-star movies to me. I think they're good enough as movies, but to me, what was I going to say? To me, it does have its missteps. I know, I've been criticizing the movie a ton throughout this review, but I did have fun with it. The kills are good. I think most of the jokes are actually really well done. Like I said, I loved what David Arquette did in this movie. I think his character was the most entertaining when he was on screen. I also thought Sam and Tara were great together. If they do make a sequel, which, again, I don't want them to, because I think, this kind of does wrap everything up fine. And to me, it's this is a good place to stop. And also, what are you going to talk about in the next Scream movie? Because this one, you at least had something. You had the requel talk, and you touched on elevated horror. Now, if they're going to go crazy with 6 and actually make it some A24 movie and get weird with it, okay, sure. But it's what's there to do now? Because that was the thing about Scream, as Steve was saying earlier in his review. First one's touching on horror movies, second sequel, so on and so forth. What's this next one gonna touch on? Unless if it is just really just playing with your expectations, because I've read interviews where it's they wanted to do crazy stuff with this, but they thought about well, if we want to make it a requel, we gotta kind of do some of the safe stuff. Where at the start of this movie originally, they were gonna kill off Ghostface. They were gonna kill Ghostface in the opening scene. That's who dies in the opening scene. And then the Ghostface killers, it's from their point of view, and they messed up. And now they got to figure out how to continue on with, or the one Ghostface killer has to figure out how to do this with only just one killer or something. And it was going to be from that point of view. And I was like, damn, that would have been actually kind of cool. But I get it.
That'd have been interesting.
You want to go back to basics and everything. So maybe with this next one, you get experimental with it. Just like how they said Stab 8 did. Maybe that's what they were kind of teasing for the future of the franchise. But yeah, I thought it was fun and everything. 3 out of 4 stars. Dom, what were you about to say?
I just want, I want to see more of the adventures of Sheriff's Deputy Markiplier screwing up, failing to catch Kat Dennings Jr. Because I legitimately thought that was Kat Dennings' little sister. I'm like, goddamn, who that? No, it's Mikey Madison apparently. Cool, whatever.
Yeah, I like the idea. If they're going to do a quick sequel, and by quick I mean within the next 3 years, give or take, I do think. I mean, they've earned the right now to go experimental with it. I think the Ghostface perspective would be pretty sweet. I don't know how you'd formulate it, but that's kind of the attraction to me about it, is that I don't know how that would go. I don't begrudge them for the formula that they took here, because they kind of have to do a reintroduction, being gone 10 years and how fast this culture moves. But I would like to see, if they are going to do another one, which they probably will. The question is when. If it's going to be a quicker turnaround than the last couple, I think that would be the way to go, is something like Joe was highlighting, something experimental.
Yeah.
Now, we will end the show, however, with this topic. Speaking of not knowing whether the hell this is supposed to be a sequel spinoff, because there's multiple conflicting reports confusing the living hell out of me today, because Joe brought this up before the show last week, and I didn't look into it. I forgot really about it until this week, but Michael Sarnowski is attached to the Quiet Place franchise. And by all accounts, how I understand this, and I hate to go against Deadline, because Deadline's usually pretty damn accurate with this stuff. I hate to go against Deadline, but I'm finding more reports that he is directing, Sarnowski, the director of the Nicolas Cage movie Pig, which made my top 10 of the year, last year's list. He is directing a Quiet Place spinoff. seemed like it was initially reported as a sequel because Krasinski initially said, am I wrong or did I cross a Mandela universe? Did Krasinski not say that he was not going to do the third movie, that the torch was going to get passed?
That's what I thought.
I thought so too.
Because Krasinski said he has other projects he wants to work on, so he needs to pass off this third one to somebody else, and he'll still produce it and maybe even write it, but he can't direct. And unless we all went through some like dimensional rift into the Mandela effect thing that happened to all of us at the same time, I could have sworn that's what we had last week.
But now I understand that Emily Blunt in July of last year confirmed that John Krasinski is working on a third movie separate from the spin-off movie, which has Michael Sarnowski attached, and he is intending to serve as the director for Quiet Place Part 3. Okay. So this spin-off was originally going to be directed by Jeff Nichols. Jeff Nichols directed Mud, the Matthew McConaughey movie. Really good movie, too. Really good movie. He also did Take Shelter with Michael Shannon. That's Jeff Nichols.
Oh, really?
Jeff Nichols was the one. Huh. Jeff Nichols. Here's how I understand this. Jeff Nichols was going to direct this Quiet Place spinoff. He dropped out. It went to Michael Sarnowski. Michael Sarnowski is now going to direct this Quiet Place spinoff. According to Emily Blunt, John Krasinski is directing A Quiet Place Part 3. Jesus, this was confusing.
And you know what? I'll trust the wife out of all these sources, though.
100%. I'm going with the wife. I'm definitely going with the wife. The wife is the one. They've had dinner table conversations about this. But yes, either way, I don't care if Sarnowski does the third one. I'd rather it be Krasinski, but Sarnowski alone is interesting. Yeah. And he's interesting because there's not a lot known about him. There's not a lot known about him yet. He's been even with this, how acclaimed Pig has been, the new Nick Cage movie. He's been very under the radar. He doesn't give many interviews. This guy is kind of an enigma. It's despite having I wouldn't say a very popular, but a very highly regarded debut movie. He's been very acclaimed on that. I don't even know what A Quiet Place spinoff is going to look like. Is it going to follow a separate family?
I was about to say you could easily do a spinoff cheaply and low grade, but honestly the possibilities are open because it's honestly a lot, especially the second movie reminded me a lot of the video game Joel and Ellie. Yes, thank you, Last of Us. And it's like you've just built this world, this post-apocalyptic world. How's another family doing? How's the government doing? How's not that I would always love. I always love to see that in any kind of post-apocalypse. You know me about that. My favorite part of any zombie anything is the first 12 hours and how the hell does the government respond to it, because it's always fascinating to see how that moves. But anyway, all that aside, there's definitely a great foundation for following an infinite number of people across this post-apocalypse, this very unique horror.
Joe, what say you? Send us home. You get last word.
I mean, for me, when I heard that he was going to direct the third, I'm like, cool. We get a different director, different take, wrap up this trilogy and everything. And then I heard he's getting the spinoff, and I'm just like, okay, that's a bit weird. The last thing I expected, when I went to the theaters in 2018 and I saw A Quiet Place Part 1, I did not expect it to A, get a sequel, but B, to start its own film universe franchise type of thing. But I'm open to it because, the second one, we just did our favorite movies of the year. The second one was my favorite movie last year. I had a ton of fun watching it. So I'm open to, we expand on this, but I don't want it to expand it to where, it kind of ruins, the mystery of these, creatures and everything. I do love the opening, the two, and I would love an idea of, how those first 12 hours really went. I just don't want this spinoff ruining the mythology of these aliens. The last thing I want is this spinoff to be they're from the galaxy of blue, 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 and then it's just oh no, now this is when it's gonna get stupid, is when you actually start explaining it. Just leave it as they're just aliens. They're just aliens that come down here. This is how they work. This is how they operate. Action. And it's just a thrilling, good time from there. You don't need to explain it, and that's the beauty of Quiet Place Part 2. I've seen so many people rip on that movie because they didn't explain anything. They just continued the movie, and it's just that's the fucking point.
Two gave me exactly what I wanted from the first one. Exactly. I want to see the monsters rip everything, like just tear through a group of people in the first hour of the disaster.
Expand the world by showing the humanity side of everything, not the alien side or anything. What are the humans doing? What is it
the inside
like
of humanity? Like literally their insides.
And this is the problem with like I think Dom calls it like the wiki age of things, is that I don't want to know any more. I don't want to know any more about the aliens than in A Quiet Place than I already do. Yeah. I don't care. Because you know what? Here's the shocking thing. And I know that like in the age where everything has to have a backstory and everything has to have a multi-dimensional sort of like prologue, like think of it this way. Isn't it a little creepier that you have no idea what they are, where they came from, how they operate, how they were born? I don't need to know. That adds to the mystery. I don't need to know what planet these damn things came from. Look what they did to the world. That's scary enough.
That's Lovecraft. That's the beauty of Lovecraft, where it's like, this is so beyond our basic feeble human understanding. That's how evil this is. That's how foreign this is. Maybe it's not even aliens. Maybe it's freaking mysticism too, dimensional. Who the hell knows? It's so beyond you. That becomes the horror. That the shroud is more horrifying than what's behind the shroud.
Exactly.
It's essentially that.
Exactly. And like that is my only fear of it having a spin-off and possibly getting future spin-offs and everything, is that are they like, don't explain it, don't go into reasons why, don't have like a scientist be like, I've been studying them ever since this all started, this is how they operate, this is what they do. And it's just like, no, we got the logistics. They hear sound. If the sound is too loud, it like, you know, it keeps their face open, you can shoot them with a shotgun and kill them. That's all I need.
Yeah, I mean, even in the first one, we didn't get great looks at them to begin with. And that made it more frightening. It's about the sound. It's about the movement. It's about the layering of suspense. Yeah. And that's what I think makes it great. To quote, actually, to bring this whole thing full circle, I'll quote the great song that's used in the Scream movies, Red Right Hand by Nick Cave. You're one microscopic cog in its catastrophic plan. And that's all you need. That's all you need with this. And I think I don't think Sarnowski's going to Ridley Scott it make this, no disrespect to Ridley, but he's not going to Ridley Scott it and make it an alien sort of movie. Yeah. And again, I'm only going off of one thing that he's ever done, but Sarnowski, and I don't think you two saw Pig with Nick Cage. Sarnowski is very like doomy. Is it like pessimistic almost in his tone, at least in Pig. He's very dark, and he's not afraid of silence or like quiet moments. So that's why I was really elated to see that he's going to be attached with this series in some way, because I think that he will bring a layer of ambiguity to this thing. Yeah. Especially tasked with just kind of creating his own thing as well.
I would love to see, and we can wrap it up here before the Zoom thing ends. I would love to see, because like, I mean, it's the very little I know about Pig from you, Steve. But yeah, it is a gloomy movie. It is a dark movie. I would love it if we saw how a family comes together and is able to survive this. Dude, let's get like, after the first 12 hours, let's get that group of survivors that are like at each other's throats and almost ruining it for one another, like, you know, and everything. Like I would like to see as a spinoff, where it's just like, yeah, we see how a family was able to operate, but what about that?
Give me something dark and brooding. That I absolutely would crave that. That's going to do it for Sleepless with Steve tonight. Beating the clock right here. Next week, we're reviewing The Lost Daughter, the new Olivia Colman, Dakota Johnson movie, which is on Netflix right now. A movie I'm very cautious about recommending to anybody with children, specifically mothers, because I've already seen it. I saw it a couple weeks ago. We'll be touching on that next week, along with some news topics, highlights posted as always, stevepulaski.com, and on this very YouTube channel. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly on this Thursday night. We'll be back next week on Wednesday, FYI, 6:30. This has been Sleepless with Steve.